Teruvan Saranai. Again, we are gathered here to know about our life, what we perceive, and the truth. Perhaps there is a big gap between what we perceive and the truth. We need to find out about that. We need to find out about the delusion. Perhaps if we are in a delusion, whatever we perceive can be wrong. Whatever we think about, or however we interpret things, can be wrong. Perhaps therefore, anger is created in our mind. Jealousy. Perhaps we don't like each other. We have enemies. We have friends. We have a family. They are familiar to us than others. We need to find out about these things, ladies and gentlemen. Perhaps you think that that's our family, then they are familiar to us. And we love them, that's normal. And others are our enemies, we hate them. When we fight with them, that's normal. But let's find out about that. Why do we have these feelings? And why can't we stop being angry? If you have a problem with that. That's the thing. First of all, I have a small request. When you listen to this sermon, or if you come to the monastery to listen to the sermon, I want you to find the answers for your problems. You all know that you have issues in your life. You have concerns in your life. Because you all are intelligent. Therefore, you can understand your issues. You can understand your problems. I want you to find answers for that through the sermon. That's the main reason I do this sermon. Not only I, but also everyone in this monastery. This is not a ceremony. This is just perhaps a troubleshooter. We are going to find your all problems. We are going to find the answers for that. Therefore, please don't be offended. Let's talk about your life. What has happened to you? And how can you come out of that? Last time we were talking about the ego, which is the enemy of all of us. That's the enemy. When you understand that, you will realize it. That's the only enemy we have. But we think that we have many enemies and we try to avoid them or fight with them and try to destroy them. But the ego is the enemy if we can destroy it. If you can destroy the enemy, you will be happy forever. The Buddha taught us the path. The Buddha showed us the path to eliminate the ego, because that is the problem. You may have heard about Four Noble Truths. The first noble truth is, perhaps you know that it's the truth of suffering. But according to our point of view, it's not the truth of suffering, it's truth of the ego. Truth of jati. That means if you can understand about jati, jati is a Pali term That is equal to the ego. Then, if you can find out about the ego, if you can see it, you will see the truth. You will definitely see the truth. If you can see ego, how can you see ego? How can you see the ego? You can't see it through your naked eyes. You need to use your wisdom. Therefore, we need to listen to the sermon and we need to find out about the world and the truth. Then we will realize about the ego. And you will realize that this is not you. This is the ego. But we will find yourself. If you can find yourself, then you will be happy forever. If you can sense yourself, so far you haven't and you couldn't. You only sense the ego. That's why you had restlessness in your mind. That's why you wanted to do something all the time. That's why you wanted to come out of something. That's how you felt vexation. That's not you. That's the ego. Because ego has its issues. I will let you know. First of all, according to the Buddha, we need to understand how the ego is created. The ego is created. The ego is a process, ladies and gentlemen. This is the biggest defilement we have, the ego. And it is created. It's a process. That is the first thing you should understand. It is not inbuilt. That's not a part of our mind. Therefore, you should be very happy by knowing that. Ego is not a part of our mind. Therefore, if you don't like ego, if you don't like the ego, and if you don't want the ego, you can eradicate it. You can cease the process because it's a process. Let's learn how the ego is created. This can be a little bit hard because I use some Pali terms. I can't explain each and everything right now because it takes another sermon to explain. Therefore, I just write and let's go with that. In our last week's sermon, we discussed about something and I can't teach you again. Therefore, let's go with that. First of all, the mind is created. When I talk about the mind is not a machine. The mind is not equipment. The mind is also a process of energy. That process consists of Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana. These are Pali terms. This is the mind. This is the Rupa. Rupa means the form, which means the color. The color must be created first of all. Then you can perceive it. This Vijnana is called perception. This is perception and this is the form, which means form must be created first and finally you can perceive it. Then from creation of the form to perception, there is a process. That process is called the mind. Therefore, when you think or when you perceive something, when you perceive the color must be created first. After that, that creation is notified, that's called Vedana. Then that creation is identified, that's called Sanya. then the resultant effect must be taken. That's called sankhara. And finally, with the resultant effect, perception occurs. That's how you can understand, you can know the color very well. This is the process of the mind. Now, when the process occurs, due to defilement, another process occurs. That is called the process of defilement. This is the process of the mind, and there is another process that's called the process of the defilement. In that case, due to ignorance, attachment is created. Due to attachment, vexation is created. Due to vexation, abhisankara is created. Abhisankara, that is the safety mechanism. I had to go through this first. After that, because each day when I start the sermon, I had to go through this, because this is the rudimental idea. If you don't know about this, or if you don't know this, you can't understand Buddhism. We need to learn the process. This is how the ego is created. I will show you. Now you can see, when vexation occurs, there is a safety mechanism in the mind. That is called abhisankara. That's also a Pali term. Abhisankara. That safety mechanism is activated, and it shows, or it creates an illusion. That is called the ego. Now you can see, it happens according to the theory of cause and effect. This causes to this. This causes to this. This causes to this. Finally, the ego is created. An ego is generated, or ego manifest. Let's take it from there. Now you can see the ego is created. The ego is created due to ignorance and attachment. Therefore, now you can see the causes. If you can see the causes, you know that if you can eradicate those causes, you can completely eliminate the ego if you don't want. But right now, I don't know that whether you need it or not. You need to learn about the ego. When you learn about the ego, perhaps one day you will say that I don't want this ego. Please tell me how to remove it. But if you don't know this process, and if you don't know that it's a process, if you think that it's inbuilt in your mind, then you are hopeless. You are destitute, because you can't do anything. It is within you. It's like cancer. You don't want cancer, do you? You don't want cancer. But if it is created, if it is formed in your body, you have to live with that, because it is inbuilt. But luckily, this is not inbuilt. This is a process. If this is inbuilt in the mind, then actually the Buddha doesn't have any purpose to serve. King Siddhartha became the Buddha by understanding this. He has seen this through his wisdom. And he taught us. Now we have the basics. We have the rudimental idea about this. Therefore, now we are going to understand this. When we understand this, then we will realize that the ego is also a process. Then if we don't want it, we can eradicate that. Let me know. If you want to eradicate the ego, let me know. Then we will talk about that. First of all, we need to go through the ego and find out about it. But perhaps you don't know about the ego. Perhaps you think that this is you. Therefore, we need to differentiate you. And we need to differentiate between you and the ego. If you can identify the ego, And if you can realize that it's not you, if you can realize that you are overwhelmed by this, then one day you may want to eradicate this. When you come to that point, we are here. That's a path. You need to practice the path. That's what we all do. We identified this. We saw that this is the greatest enemy. We saw that this ruined our life. Because of this, we couldn't perceive, or we couldn't experience happiness. We realized that. Therefore, we wanted to destroy this. We wanted to cease this process. That's why we became monks and they became nuns. That's the only reason. Not because of food or for requisites. We had everything. We had a good education. And we had everything. Wealth. We came from well-off families, well-off background. But the only thing what we wanted is ceasing the process of ego. Because we understood about this. We saw it. Therefore, my humble request is, I want you to see this. It's okay you to see this because now you can see that it's a process. In case if you don't like this, we can eradicate it. If you like it, we can keep it. To keep this, what should you do? According to this. This is like a formula. If you want to keep the ego, what should you do? You need to feed ignorance. Just feed ignorance like you do all the time. Feed ignorance and attachment. When you feed ignorance, then this will be strengthened. Then you can live with this. But it will destroy your happiness. Have you experienced a calm mind? Serene mind? Perhaps you think that when I listen to a calm music, when I listen to calm music, I had a calm mind. This is not the calmness I'm talking about. This is not the serenity I'm talking about. If you can experience happiness without doing anything, without doing any specific thing, without listening to music, without reading a book, without watching a movie, without talking to a friend or using your phone, that's the happiness I'm talking about. That's the calmness I'm talking about. That's the serenity I'm talking about. Otherwise, you had to make yourself busy, ladies and gentlemen. You had to make yourself busy. Because you had to calm yourself all the time. Therefore, you should carry music with you. Because whenever your mind is not calm enough, then you have to listen to that. When you live with someone, then if you are angry with them, then you have to wait. You have to let them know that, oh, wait, you stay there. First of all, I must listen to this music and let me calm myself down, my mind down. After that, I'll talk to you. This is ridiculous. How can you do that? No one can do that. That's why everybody fight. Everybody has their own opinions. Therefore, they try to win their opinions. Therefore, they always fight. You all have this experience. You always fight. Fight with your siblings, fight with your parents, fight with your spouse and kids. This is how you live. But we don't have to do that. We also have kids, so many. But we don't have to fight with them. We don't fight with them. We don't argue with them. Because we have understood this. We have understood this and we practice the path. Or we are practicing the path. Therefore, we know what to do to eradicate this, eliminate this. Therefore, we do the thing that must be done. Therefore, I want you to understand this. When you understand this, perhaps, if you are meritorious enough, you will do the same. Then you will free yourself from your own slavery. Let's talk about this. Now you can see, when the mind is created, when the process of the mind occurs, this process is also created. That means each time the ego is created or ego manifests. Each time. The mind means when I show you this, then you will see blue color, but that blue color is not in the pen. It is created in your mind. You all know that, and it is scientifically proven. It's scientifically proven, and the blue color is created in your mind now. That means Rupa is created. After that, you get the perception. You know that this is blue color. You got the perception. That means the mind is created. When the mind is created, this process is also created. This process also occurs. That means each and every time this process occurs and the ego is created. Now you can see, the ego is not continuous. The ego is discrete. Each time it is generated. With the mind. When the mind is created, the ego is created simultaneously. Does that make sense to you now? Or it's like clear as mud? I told you, I want you to listen to these sermons for at least 50 sermons. Then you will realize things. Because these are not familiar with you. You all know that. Because this is not about the world. This is beyond the world. We are talking about supramundane things. Very spiritual things. Perhaps we were not into these things. These words are new. Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana. These things are very new and Pali terms. When we take their English meanings, perhaps we can't get the real meaning. That's why we need to go through these things over and over again, and one day you will see the meanings. Again, you will see the meanings. When I say R, which means Rupa, I can't explain the meaning, but you will see the meaning, I'm telling you. You will see the meaning when you develop your wisdom. When you build your wisdom, then you will see through the wisdom the meaning of Rupa. Until that, let's talk about that. Now you can see when the process of the mind happens. When the process of the mind happens, the ego is also created at the same time. In that case, you can see when the ego is created, you feel yourself. That's called the false sense of existence. You feel your existence. But when you feel your existence, you think that that's you. But actually, this is you, ladies and gentlemen. This is you. This is the mind. This is the consciousness. You use this. You don't use this. If you want to perceive this, you need to use this process. Why do you want to use this process? What is the purpose of this? If you want to see blue color, what is the purpose of this? You don't want to use this process. But this occurs. Unbeknown to you. It happened. You can't stop that. Because if ignorance is there, then you can't stop that. It's like when you switch this light on, then you can't stop. Light comes out from the bulb. Because there is a process. When you activate the process, you can't stop it. If you want to stop that, you have to go to the root and stop that. Then you need to switch it off. Here, if you want to switch this off, what should you do? You need to eradicate the ignorance. Otherwise, this is created with the mind. In that case, first of all, you should understand that you don't need this. Because this is not you. This is not useful. This is useless. This is a headache. But it's like cancer. It is created. Tell me if you can see, tell me one purpose of this. Vexation. Do you want it? Vexation? No, you don't want that. Due to vexation, Abhisankara is created. In Buddhism, it is called karma. Karma is created. You don't need that. An attachment, you don't need that. If you want to see blue color, why do you need attachment? If you want to watch a movie, why do you need attachment? You only need this, ladies and gentlemen. This is the truth. This is false. If you talk about righteousness, people talk about righteousness. This is righteousness. But when I say this is righteousness, perhaps you say righteousness means being good and have good moral values. And yeah, that's one meaning. But righteousness means you should be right. But if you separate this world to bad and good, you separate that. Who is good and who is bad? Tell me. Are you good? Perhaps. Not perhaps. Most of the time. I am good. Others are bad. I am the best person in the world. This doesn't say that. Who said that? This. I am the best person in the world. I am the most beautiful person in the world. I am the richest. I am the most educated one. This speaks, not this. This doesn't want to tell about any entity, ladies and gentlemen, because this is a process, and when it occurs, it passes away. When it serves its purpose, it passes away. It doesn't have any comments. But this feels that it's an entity. Ego feels that it's an entity. Therefore, the ego has to collect all these things. Because if something is an entity, it should have a history. Therefore, now this has history. That's why you have a history. Can you remember your history? You have a history. You can remember your childhood. You can remember yesterday. Not only that, you need future. That's why you have 3 times. The past, the present, and the future. But this doesn't have that. Try to understand this, please. What about this? You can see the blue color. Is this present or past or the future? You can't say that because this process occurs. Due to the process, the mind perceives blue color. That's it. You can't talk about its past because the mind is not there anymore to talk about its past. The mind is created to perceive this. When it serves its purpose, it passes away. After that, it's no more there to talk about that, to put comments. But the ego is an entity. Actually, it's not an entity, but it feels that it's an entity, like you feel that you are an entity. If you are the mind, you don't feel that you are an entity. But if you are the ego, that means if you are overwhelmed by ego or the ego, take charge of your life, of your mind, then you have a history. You are an entity. That's why you try to collect your memory. That's why you try to remember things. Your memory helps you to make that entity. I'll show you how you use your memory. I'll show you why do you like, or why you like to keep your memories alive. Let's come to this again. When the ego is created, ego feels its existence. That means now the ego thinks that it's a creature or it's a being. That means it's an entity. When it feels that it's an entity, it needs an identity. That is the biggest problem, ladies and gentlemen. Each and every time this is created, it needs its identity. That's why you need to use your memory. Otherwise, when this is created at the first time, you might say, you are John. And the second time when it is created, perhaps you say that you are Gregory. Because if you can't remember your past, that means if you don't have a memory, then you can't create the same identity. That's why you are so into your memories. You always use that. Perhaps you take photographs to remember your past. Perhaps you take your photo of your face. I can't say you take a photo of you. How can you take a photo? Who are you? This or this? If this is you, can you take a photo of the process of energy? No. Can you take a photograph of process of defilements? No. Then how can you take a photograph? You use your body, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, when the ego is created, it needs an identity because it's an entity. Therefore, it needs an identity. Therefore, it uses the body. That's how you feel that this is you. But it's really dangerous. When something happens to this body, what do you feel? When something happens to this body, the ego is identified with that. When you have cancer, the ego identified with that. Therefore, you think that you have cancer. Therefore, you suffer. You can't stop that. When you lose one of your limbs, Just imagine that. You have to live with that forever. Can you tolerate that pain, ladies and gentlemen? The mental pain I'm talking about. Because you always feel that you don't have an arm. You lost. I lost this. You always talk about what you lost. I lost some money. I lost my family. I lost my husband. I lost my wife. I lost my children. You always talk about what you lost. That means when the ego is created, it is identified with all these things, especially with the body. That's why when you are aging, you are suffering. You don't like aging, ladies and gentlemen. You don't like to become an old person. Because when the body is getting older, what do you feel? You feel that you are getting old. You feel that you are an old person. You don't like that. But I'm telling you, you are not old. You are not an old person, ladies and gentlemen, because you are the mind. The mind is brand new and it is created right now. It is always new. It is always new. If you can understand that, you can live a brand new life forever. But right now, you live perhaps 80 years old life. Don't you want a brand new life? We can give you if you can understand that. If you want to live a healthy life, there's a method. Because your body can be unhealthy, not the mind. The mind is the purest. It doesn't have any ailments, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't have any diseases. Then perhaps you think that, then what about mental illnesses? That happens due to ignorance and attachment. All the mental illnesses occur due to ignorance and attachment. This is the purest. If you can experience this, you will be over the moon. I'm telling you. Therefore, it's worth to fight, ladies and gentlemen, to have a brand new life. Each day, each time, in each second, you will have a brand new life and you will live in that with happily. Because you don't have vexation. You are not vexed anymore. You can have a brand new life. Otherwise, if this body is getting older, you will suffer even more. And the other thing is, when you feel pain, how do you feel that? That pain belongs to? When there is a pain in your body, when you have a headache, whose headache is that? Your headache. It's my headache. That's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. Because when the ego is created, it is identified with what it has. The first thing it takes is the body. When it takes the body as its identification, whatever happens to the body, it has to take it. How can you live? That's why, actually, this pain, the mental pain and suffering is unnecessary. This is unnecessary, ladies and gentlemen. When you have a pain in your body, you have to identify with that because The ego needs the identification. Therefore, it takes the body. That is the nearest thing, the closest thing. Therefore, it takes it no matter what happens. Perhaps if your face is burnt, now that is the ugliest thing in the world, what happens? Will the ego use another one? Share another face? Will it share another face? Lend another face? Can I take your face to make my identity? It can't. It has to use the same face. That's why when you feel that you are ugly, you are so upset, and you try to make your face beautiful. That's why there is $1 billion, perhaps $1 trillion dollars in industry for beauty. Beauty industry is very huge, ladies and gentlemen, because everyone is identified with the ego, with the body, because everyone has the ego. I can't say everyone, actually every mind has the ego. Then the ego needs the identity. Then ego chooses the body. That is the nearest thing to it. Therefore, it chooses it. And now the ego is identified with this face, this body. Then whatever happened to the body, the ego has to suffer. Ego has to suffer means actually the mind is suffering due to all these things. That's why when I speak to you, I have to be very careful, because you can be offended. And words can be offensive, because whatever word I utter, you hear it, then at the same time, the ego is created, and the ego wants the identity. Therefore, it uses the word as its identity. That's why if I say, you are a lion, that's okay. You are a lion. You are the king. You are the greatest man ever. Yes, you are okay with that. You are a donkey. You are a fool. And when I say that, you say, it's offensive. It's offensive. Because whatever word or whatever the thing you understand, the ego is identified with that. Now try to understand. This is the reason you suffer. You suffer forever, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't eradicate this, you have to suffer forever, not only in this life, but also forever. Forever. You have to be very, very careful with others. When you listen to them, you are afraid to talk to someone. Because if he uses a rude word, the ego is hurt. You don't like rude words because they are not natural, they are not neutral to you. They are rude. There are some words, they are nice. That's why I told you, if you are a lion, yes. But it's also an animal, but you are okay with that. If I say you are an animal, you don't like that. But you are a lion, yeah, okay. You're okay with that. Because you have views, ladies and gentlemen. Because the ego always wants to separate the world. Because the ego thinks that it is completely separated from others. That's how the ego is created, end of the day. The ego wants to see the separateness. The ego wants to separate the world. To separate the world, the ego has to produce measurements to measure the society. That's why we have caste systems. To measure the society. Someone is superior, someone is inferior. The ego creates them. Levels, social levels, social status, titles, ranks. The ego has created them. Pure consciousness doesn't want all these things. Tell me, this is pure consciousness. Can you see this? Okay, that is pure consciousness. Do you want to separate the world? What do you want? Which title do you want? With this. Let's forget the ego. Let's talk about the pure consciousness. When you see this, that's pure consciousness. What do you want? Do you want to separate the world? No. You saw it, you perceive it, that's it. That's it. The sound, the buffalo vibrates the air, then a sound is created in your mind. And the sound is perceived. The sound is created, that is rupa, that's form, that is created, then it is perceived. That is the process of the mind. That is the consciousness. Now, the real consciousness or pure consciousness occurs. And do you want to separate the world? Do you want to make any titles? Any status? You don't want to do anything. But this needs, because this is an entity. If the ego feels that it's an entity, it feels others also are entities. Therefore, when you feel your existence, you feel others' existence as well at the same time. Therefore, you always have, this is I and this is they. Others. Myself and others. This is I. This is others. Or they are others. That's why you always fight with them. Then when you feel your existence, when you feel that you are an entity, then your entity must be superior. To make it superior, you had to create levels. That's why the society has many levels, many titles, many status. You always want to be superior, ladies and gentlemen. You can see that. To make yourself superior, you work your fingers to the bone. Day in and day out. You don't have, I'm sorry to say this. Is that okay? Let me tell you. After that, I'll say sorry. End of the sermon, I'll say sorry. But let me clean your mind, please. This is a wound. This is the biggest wound. This is the most painful wound ever. And after that, I will give you a brand new life forever. This is not only my saying, ladies and gentlemen. I have written something here. Something that the Buddha said. According to this doctrine, you can see that if you don't need or if you don't want the ego, you can completely eradicate that with or without my help. You can see that. First of all, I want you to understand this. Then when you understand this, then you don't need me anymore. You need to practice. If you can see the path, then you need to practice. From time to time, you need the teacher to guide you, because we always need a hand to hold, because this is a new path. And you will have a voice to guide, because you have a teacher. Your teacher will guide you. But first of all, you need to choose the path. Why do you choose the path? You need your salvation. How do you know about the salvation? You can see that if you need a brand new life, or if you need suffer-free life, You need to be the pure consciousness. If the mind is overwhelmed by this, or if the mind is subdued by this, you can't be happy. Because you have to deal with this ego. The most nasty thing in the world. I'm telling you. Because you have experienced this. Therefore, I don't have to say anything. But I will remind you. I will remind you about your ego. Now, in this case, you can see when the ego is created, it is identified with what it has. Therefore, it always identifies. It is always identified with the body, and it wants to be superior. That's why you always want a superior body. Just imagine that. If you have a power to change your body, how would it be? To change your body. What face do you want actually? Just think about this. Not now, perhaps when you go home. Think about this. If you have a power to change your face, what face would you like to fix? Would you fix the same face? I don't think so. Because you are fed up with this. When you go to the mirror, always you say, oh, this is the ugliest one. But therefore, you change your hairstyle. You put some makeup on your face. And you try to draw a picture. Again, I'm really sorry. But in end of the sermon, I'll say sorry again. Right? No, because I am challenging to your identity, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore, you should be offended. You will be and you are. That's why it's really difficult for me to talk about this. But this is the greatest wound ever. Therefore, we need to deal with this somehow. This is the problem. This is the issue. That's why I told you. This is the issue. Don't ever think that you have other issues. Don't think that poverty is the problem. Don't ever think that uneducation is the problem. No. This is the problem. You always need all these things because of this. The ego needs this. Otherwise, to protect this body, you need only 4 requisites. If you have something to eat, something edible is enough. If you have something to eat, just think about this. But you have a job. You got a good education. Because the society told you to get a good education. Because then you will have a huge lot of money. Because you need that. You need that to satisfy the ego. The consciousness didn't say that. It didn't say that. You didn't go to the consciousness, ladies and gentlemen. You went to the ego. One day in your childhood, because you wanted to be happy. Can you remember? You went to your parents, you went to your teachers, you went to the society. You went to them, you talked to them, you talked to your elders. Can you remember that? That means actually you went to the ego. You went to the ego and you asked for help, asked for some advice. Then what they said is, get a good education, be a rich person, have more money, have more wealth, acquire many things, as much as you can, as many as you can. That's what we have been taught. Yesterday, you may have talked to someone, then what he said. It's the same thing, because you always meet the ego. You don't meet consciousness. If you meet the consciousness, it will say everything is neutral in this world. Be calm, my son. That's it. Everything is neutral. But the problem is, nothing is neutral in this world for you. Just think about that. What is the favorite color? Don't you have a favorite color? Just think about that. All the colors are neutral, but you have a favorite color. You perhaps your favorite color is red. Then why do you hate blue? Why don't you like this? What's the problem? What did this do to you? But the problem is, this is special. Because always something is special to the ego. That's why you have special people in your life. That's why you chose your spouse, ladies and gentlemen. At that time, she was so special. I'm not sure about right now. After that, many, I'm pretty sure about this, but don't quarrel, please. Don't argue with this when you go home. But I'm pretty sure one day you saw a special lady and you wanted to marry her, which means you wanted to own her. And you did it. Just after that day, perhaps in the wedding, you saw another special lady, but you already signed and you already ruined your life. You regret at the wedding. Because you saw another special lady, a special person. That's how the ego is. The ego always wants something special. Because the ego wants to separate the world. The ego believes that everything is separated and everything is unique and everything is special. Therefore, this color is special, this color is special. Therefore, perhaps this is your favorite color, perhaps this is your favorite color. Therefore, you love this and you hate this. And if you want to paint your walls and you use this color, no matter how much it is or how much it costs, you use your money. That's the reason the ego asks you to earn money. In your childhood, when you went to someone, you went to the ego actually. You went to the ego and asked, how can I be happy? The ego said that if you want to be happy, you need to acquire many things. As many as you can acquire, and you will have favorite things, then you need money to buy those things. That's how you have begun your life. That's what happened to me, ladies and gentlemen. Right now, I regret. Totally, I regret. I don't like this because this is fantastic. If you ever experience this, at least for a second, you will definitely eradicate this. You will agree with me. Therefore, I want you to experience this at least for a second. Then I don't have to use my words. Otherwise, all the time I had to say that you need to eradicate this, this is the enemy, you have to fight with this. But if you can experience this, that means if you can experience a brand new life for a second, you don't want me to force you. Because you know that if something is good, if something is the best, then you will definitely achieve it. When you have your choices. Can you remember when you want to do your A-levels, perhaps let's take A-levels. When you want to take your A-levels, then you have choices. Then you wanted to choose the best. Then again you went to, tell me, you went to the ego. You went to the ego and asked, which subject is the best? Then he said that, or he or she or whoever, the person said that, you do this, you can earn a lot. You can earn a lot. And you can earn respect. There are some occupations. It has some respect in it, like become a doctor, a teacher, because those are necessities. Perhaps become a farmer, but it's a little bit low. Because uneducated people, are involved in that industry. Therefore, Not all of them are uneducated. I'm telling you, some uneducated people. Uneducated means, what do you mean by uneducated people, ladies and gentlemen? When you learn maths, you are educated. But if you are a carpenter, aren't you not educated? Everybody is educated in this world, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody has the knowledge. That's why you need to listen to everyone. Even though you know 1,000 things, you need to listen to a person who knows one. You need to listen to that person because he's knowledgeable. He has knowledge in different sector. That means he's also educated. But the problem is, in education, the ego has created many levels. Whereas when you do maths, then you are the greatest. When you do physics, you know that. If you are a theoretical physicist, then you can say that I'm the greatest because we invent things, we invent theories. Because the ego. That's why you wanted to choose the best, and you chose the best for you, and you did that, and you got your degree, you got your PhD finally. Now you are a doctor. Then if someone talks to you, Mr. John, you will say that, Mr. John? Dr. John, thank you. Just imagine that, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, the ego is doing a business. It has its own life. It is hurt all the time. Therefore, it wants to protect. Try to understand this. If you can eradicate this, you don't have any of these problems anymore. This is the only issue. That's why we practice. We don't afraid of anything, ladies and gentlemen. We just need to eradicate this because this is a headache. We have to accept all social conventions. You know that. You had to. You had to accept that. And you had to live with that. All the social conventions. Why? What are the social conventions, ladies and gentlemen? Who has created that? The ego. All the conventions. Good and bad. Who has created that? The ego. Tell me, is good good? Is good good? Is bad bad? But you have an opinion, I know that. You always believe that good is good, bad is bad. How? It's social convention. Therefore, you hate the bad. You love the good. And one day, the good will do something bad to you. Then you will hate them as well. Can't you see that you are a puppet? Perhaps you think that you are the king. You are a big person, but you are a hero, perhaps. But the thing is, you are a puppet. The ego runs your life. You just need to see an ego runs your life because ego is created over you. This is you. Pure consciousness. This is you. You only see. You only see. But the ego runs your life. The ego makes decisions. What to do and what not to. Ego has made the decision, ladies and gentlemen. Can't you remember? All the decisions you have made so far. Who has created them? Who has decided? The ego. That's why you had to think about all the social conventions. With that, you got your everything. That's why you wanted to acquire many properties. You really believe that when you have properties, you will be superior and you will be safe. I have a small question for you. Just think about this. Let's assume that you eat hourly. You eat hourly. In every hour, you eat something. And something scrumptious and something very expensive. Let's assume that you spend $1,000 per meal and you don't sleep. You only eat hourly. That means per day you need 24,000. Then why do you have 30,000 in your bank account? If you have enough money to eat, why do you need more? What is the limit, ladies and gentlemen, of your earnings? What is the limit? You can see that you don't have a limit. You can't draw the line because you need more, not you. The ego needs more because the ego has a fear. It is afraid of losing things, losing its identity. Whenever it needs to be identified with something, it needs money. Therefore, it forces you to earn money. To earn money, you use your time. But the time is an illusion. Time is an illusion, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore, actually, you use your life. You use your life to earn money. And you try to satisfy the ego. That's why you have wantings. Now, in this case, you can see this doesn't have any wanting. If it has any wanting, please let me know. Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana. This process is only the consciousness, ladies and gentlemen. This is the consciousness, but this has the wanting. You can see that with ignorance, attachment is created. Attachment means full of wantings. Attachment is full of wantings. Because when you get attached to something, you have wantings. That's why you have wantings right now. You have wantings. You need that. You not need, actually. I want this, I want that. Therefore, you have many wantings. Then when you have a wanting, vexation occurs. Therefore, you have to fulfill your wantings. To fulfill your wantings, you need money. That's why you earn. That's why you can't draw the line. That's why you earn. Perhaps when you are in your 80s, you will earn. Because in 80s, also, you will get a new wanting and you have to fulfill that. Otherwise, you have to be vexed until you have that in your mind. Perhaps you need to travel, ladies and gentlemen. That's why you travel. You need to eat delicious food, but they are expensive. Perhaps you need to go to a special hotel, 7-star hotel. A dish is very expensive. One dish. Perhaps you have to spend a lot, but you are okay with that. Perhaps you are going to spend your monthly salary to eat a meal, to take a meal, because this asks you to do that. Is that intelligent? You all are well educated. I know that. You all are intelligent. Please answer the question. Is that intelligent? But why do you do that? Because you can't stop yourself. If you ask from the consciousness, it will say that, are you stupid? It will say that, are you a fool? It will ask that. But the ego doesn't let it talk. Ego needs, because ego is vexed, ladies and gentlemen. Ego needs to take the meal. It doesn't matter what the cost is. That's why you spend a lot to fulfill your wantings. But every day, you have many wantings. Wantings are added. Because the ego is free to get views. Because the ego wants to be superior, therefore it's always ready to take views to be superior. Therefore, when someone comes to you and says that, I ate delicious food, then from another restaurant, then definitely you will have a wanting. If someone says that I have read a fantastic book, it needs to hear the word fantastic. That's it. Whatever the book, it doesn't matter. If someone says it's fantastic, it is the most beautiful thing. Because those things are superior words, ladies and gentlemen. If someone says that I read a book, disgusting. The book was disgusting. Can I offer you? Huh? But that is the best-selling book in the year. But he said that the book was disgusting. Then you will believe it. You don't want that because you don't want to be inferior in front of that person. Perhaps you like that book and you will read it later. If another person comes and says the same thing, now there is a society, two people against you. Therefore, if you accept the book, then you will feel inferior. Therefore, you always diminish its value, ladies and gentlemen, and you will agree, at least for the time being, you will agree that that book is disgusting. That book is not good. Because you don't want to be inferior. That's how you have created many opinions in the society. That's how you always jump on the bandwagon, because to save your neck, to save your superiority. Again, when I say you, this is not you, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, I'm talking about the ego. When I talk about you, you are the greatest, you are the purest. But if you can't understand that, if the mind is taken by this, then this is you. But actually, this is you. How sad. The greatest thing in the world lies in the mud. But if you can practice, you can relieve yourself. There's a path. There's a way. Not only the Buddha said, Jesus Christ said. Jesus Christ also said the same thing. The ego. He said that I am the truth. If you are familiar with the Bible, I am the truth. Who's I am? People think that he was talking about himself. He wasn't talking about himself. I am the truth. This is the truth. Because he said that the truth will set you free. Then if the truth will set you free, then you need to find the truth. Then he said that I am the truth. If you want to find the truth, find it in yourself. It is within you, the truth. This is the ego. Ego is the truth. The Buddha said the truth of suffering, which means the first noble truth. Suffering means it's not suffering, actually. That is the ego. If you can eliminate this, then you will achieve the life. That's what Jesus Christ again said. I am the way and the life. And this is the way. You can see that. This is the way. You don't have to fight with others. You don't have to find your sanctuary in any others. You need to find your sanctuary. You can find your sanctuary in yourself. Because you yourself must strive. Because this is your battle. That's why I always tell you, we can help you, but we can't fight for you. You need to fight your battle. You need to identify the battle and you need to start battling. Therefore, whatever religion you believe, doesn't matter. Here we don't have any Hindus, otherwise I will use Hindu sloka and show that. Because we have studied main religions and we wanted to find the essence. And we found it, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore, whatever religion you believe, if you want to find your salvation, if you want to achieve your salvation, you can achieve if you are ready. But if you just want to beg in front of God or in front of your teachers, whoever, trees, pagodas, if you want to beg for something, then you can't have your salvation. Because having a meal doesn't give you salvation, ladies and gentlemen. You have to deal with the wisdom. You have to improve your wisdom. To improve the wisdom, you need to deal with nature. You need to deal with the truth. This is the truth. And if you can deal with this, you will see the life. That's why he said, I am the life. This is the life again. Now you can see, first he said, I am the truth. I am the life. This is the life. Then you can say that this is I am. Consciousness. This is I am. I am the life. The life. That means, I told you, which is brand new. Therefore, let's work out our salvation. Let's work out our salvation, ladies and gentlemen. This is the only thing that must be done. But if you do other things, like what you have been doing, you serve the ego. You never get your life back. You never experience the life. Therefore, whatever happened to you so far, whatever the experience you got so far, I want you to think with the ego. What ego has done to you. When you have wantings, when you were vexed, when you wanted to come out of vexation, when you were restless, this is the reason. This is the enemy. Perhaps you think that your next door neighbor was the enemy. He has done something to you because you were vexed due to something. Then you thought that you were vexed due to that person. That person has created many issues in your life. Perhaps your spouse, if you are divorcee. If you are a divorcee, perhaps you think that the other person has done everything to your life. He hasn't done anything. He hasn't done anything, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let's assume that you got your divorce recently. Let's assume that assume that everyone got divorced. Okay? Right. Can you see this? Can you see this? You are a divorcee. Can you see this? Okay. Nothing happened to you there. If you can see this, if you can hear this sound, if you can smell something, if you can touch something, nothing happened to you. Your other person hasn't taken anything from you because you can see, you can hear, you can smell. But You are the ego is identified with that situation, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore, you are so inferior. Therefore, you hate other person because you became a divorcee. Like you became, perhaps, I don't know, like a little bit lower. Because this is not the first time you marry. Now you had to marry a second time. Then you had to say that your second marriage. That's why you means again this, the ego. That's why people hate their spouse, ex-spouse especially. Their ex-spouses, they hate because they feel so inferior now. Otherwise, they haven't taken anything from you. Your enemy, what has taken from you? Your enemy, if you have enemies, if you don't like some people, they haven't done anything to you because you have the life with you. The life means the pure consciousness. The pure consciousness is within you. Therefore, you never lost anything, ladies and gentlemen. You have everything. Then why do you worry? Why are you worrying, ladies and gentlemen? Why do you have issues? If you have issues with your rent, that's fine. If you don't have anything to eat, that's fine. But if you have mental issues means actually mental problems, not diseases I'm talking about, mental problems, mental pain, then if you have these things, what's the reason? Just think about that. Then why do you accuse someone else? Why can't you be righteous? Again, I came to the point. Righteous. Righteousness is this. This is the righteousness, ladies and gentlemen. This is the most right thing in the world. Then if you believe in this, if you are the consciousness, you are righteous. Then you shall see God. That's what Jesus said. Blessed are the righteous, for they shall see God. Or those who are in righteousness, they shall see God. God means heaven, the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven means this. Where you can achieve the life. Here you have a horrible life. When you go there means when you achieve this, you have the life, very specific and brand new and pure life. There you don't have vexation, you don't have to suffer. Suffering is not there, lamentation is not there. You don't have to cry, you don't have to be angry, you don't have to resent, you don't have to regret. You have a memory, but you don't have to be identified with that. But when you are with the ego is always identified with your memory, then again you have resentment. Therefore, if you try to solve your problems, if you believe us, I ask you to stop for a while. Can you stop solving your problems only for 2 years and come and stay with us? Within 2 years, we will show you something. You don't have to solve your problems right now. But if you have to pay the rent, please pay that. If you have your installment in your car, then you have to pay that. Otherwise, you will lose it. Otherwise, if you have mental problems, which means mental issues, again, when I say mental, it's not mental. It's mental. Again, I can't use these words because psychological issues, mental issues, when I use that, it's people use these words to mention pain or whatever, diseases. But I'm talking about your pain. You don't have to live with pain. But if you try to solve your problems, you have an enemy, you want to eradicate that person. You want to eliminate that person from your life. Therefore, you do something, and finally you will end up in jail. That's what happened to people. If you go to the jail and you will meet those people, then you will realize that when you talk to them, they will say that I hate that person because he had done something to me and my family. Then I hated him, and therefore I wanted to eradicate him, eliminate him from my sight, perhaps my world. Therefore, I stabbed him, I killed him, I murdered him, and finally I had to come to jail. He's okay with that because he had eradicated that person. He solved the problem, ladies and gentlemen. He solved the problem with the great advice by taking perhaps the greatest advice from the stupid ego. This is so stupid, not you. This is so stupid. I can't use these words. Perhaps these words are offensive. Stupid. But this is stupid. Can't you see that? Why that person killed a person? To solve the problem? Didn't he know that if he murders someone, then he has to go to jail? He knows that. But he was so angry. He was so angry and he couldn't control himself. The problem is, if this is you, why can't you control yourself? If this is you, you should be able to control yourself. If this is you. But the problem is, this is not you, therefore you can't control. This is you. You can control this. If you don't want to see this, close your eyes, then you can't see this. Yeah? Close your eyes, you can't see that. Therefore, you can control yourself. But when you are angry, don't be angry. Can you do that? When you are angry, I say, don't be angry. Can you stop that? You can't. When you suffer, I said, no. Be happy. Then will you laugh at that time? When you cry, I said, you must be happy right now. Then can you control your happiness? Can you control your suffering? No, you can't control anything. You can't control any of your emotions because emotions are created in the ego. Please try to understand about this. This is the greatest disease ever. You can't control your emotions. You know that. But you can control your perception if you want. If you don't want this, you can close your eyes. Straight away, you can close your eyes. Or you can pluck your ears. You can do that. You can completely control yourself, but you can't control this. Therefore, please try to understand that this is not you. This is the most unintelligent thing in the world, but this is the purest thing. Therefore, you are the purest. At least when I say that, believe that. Because I said that you are the purest. I didn't say you are the dirtiest. And you are the purest. If you believe that, and if you try to fight with this, if you try to seize the process of the ego, then you will win. This is the only battle we have. This is the last battle, final battle, ladies and gentlemen. That's the only battle the Buddha asks us to do. We don't have to practice, we don't have to fight with others. We don't have to change the world. We need to change ourselves. We need to change ourselves means we need to see ourselves first. We need to identify ourselves. This is us or this is you. This is defilements. This happens due to mental defilements. Ignorance, attachment, and fear is also a mental defilement. Fear is created. Fear belongs to the ego. This doesn't have any fear, but this has fear. Fear is created in ego. Therefore, if you are afraid of something, it happens due to ego. Due to the ego, ladies and gentlemen, not due to the consciousness. Therefore, I want you to be conscious. To do so, we have to eradicate ignorance. To eradicate ignorance, we need to learn the truth. But before that, let's talk more about ignorance, more about the ego. First of all, you should be able to differentiate between the ego and yourself. This is you, this is the ego. This is you, and this is the world that is created in your mind. In this world means this is only Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana. That means only consciousness. Blue color is there, red color is there. Some sounds are there. Smells are there. But here you have a world. Because when you see me, what can you see? What can you see and what do you perceive? You see something, but you perceive something else. Yes or no? You see something. You see red color, you see brown color, you see black color, you see white color. This is the only place I have something white. Then you see colors. You see colors. Other than that, what can you see? You can't see any other thing. But when you see colors, and the ego wants to separate this from everything, and the ego creates a person. Person means an entity. Then you think that this is a person. This is a being. And this doesn't have any being, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, this has the body as well as the mind. The mind is a process. The body is a body. It consists of many things. That's why it's called body. This is not one thing. This is a body. It has many parts. It is made up of electrons, protons, and neutrons, or atoms. This is the body. And the process of the mind occurs. Apart from that, you can't see anything. But the ego creates a being here. That's why you think that a being talks to you. The being speaks to you. Then you have created a name, Guru Hamduru. To that being, not this body, not this mind, not the wisdom. That's why I always ask, please respect the wisdom. Don't choose this face. If you choose this face, you need this face all the time. When this face comes and starts speaking, then you think that, oh, Guru Hamduru is there. Guru Hamduru is not a face, ladies and gentlemen. Guru Hamduru is not the mind. Not only Guru Hamduru, Buddha Hamduru, which means the Buddha. Buddha is not a face. Buddha is not a body. Buddha is not the mind. Actually, Buddha is wisdom. Therefore, if you want the Buddha, you need to follow the wisdom. You need to follow the wisdom. Take the wisdom out of this. But here, when you see that, you will see a being, because the ego makes the decision. You perceive something, but ego makes the decision. The thing is, when you perceive something, you need to make a decision, ladies and gentlemen. That's the other problem. When you have to make a decision, and a fool makes decisions on behalf of you, you will be yes. You can fill the blanks. Because on behalf of this, this makes the decision. Because when you perceive that, I'll tell you one example. When you perceive that, you can perceive red color, but you can perceive red color means not the word red. You can perceive the color as red. After that, you have to use your memory and you have to make decisions. about the colors, name. Likewise, every time the mind has to make decisions. When the mind has to make decisions and the mind is taken by this, the ego has to make the decision. Ego always makes the decision, ladies and gentlemen. Ego always makes the decision. It makes decisions foolishly because it doesn't know anything. It believes that everything is an entity. Therefore, you always see a person here. This is created in your mind and you make a being out of this. Again, this is created in your mind. These colors and this shape. Due to these colors, a shape is created. A human shape. A human shape is created in your mind. You can't see these colors here. What is the color of this robe? This is colorless. This doesn't have any color, ladies and gentlemen. Color is created in your mind. This is dye. Colors are created in your mind. Therefore, with the colors, you can see a person, a figure, a person. Person means a shape. When you see this, you can see a shape. I can draw a shape. Look. What did I do to draw a shape? Did I draw a circle? No. I add some dye onto this board. A circle is created in your mind. And you named it. Did I name it? No, you named it. This is how. Because colors are not in the world. Colors are created in your mind. Sound is not in the world. Sound is created in your mind. These are scientifically proven. We always use modern science with the Buddha's Dhamma, which means Buddha's doctrine. Then it is very strong. We can make strong arguments to save ourselves. Because the modern science is true and the Buddha's doctrine is true. Therefore, we take two truths. Finally, it becomes one truth, which is the truth. Therefore, now you can see, the color is not in the robe. Color is created in your mind. Color is not in my arm, my body. It is created in your mind. Finally, because of these colors, you can see a shape. Then you can see a shape, and finally you have to make a decision, but you can't make the decision because the ego is there. Therefore, the ego makes a decision. The ego wants this to be an entity. Therefore, it says this is an entity and this is a being. Therefore, you think that a being is here. If something happened to this, you think that, oh, that being dies. Then the ego is identified with that. Then you say, oh, my spouse died. Oh, my child died. That's why you always worry. That's why you always suffer. When something happened to someone, then you think that he died, she died, it died. No one can die in this world, ladies and gentlemen. But when I say that, you might think that, oh, this person is mad. No one can die in this world. But within a second, I think, 2 people die in this world. That means everyone cries in this world. If someone you love dies, what do? You will. The first thing you should do is, that's the social convention. If you don't cry, then they will think that you are unkind. Therefore, you should cry. But however, you will cry when someone dies. Within a second, 2 people die in this world. Can't you see that? Everybody is crying right now. Everybody means most of. Because when one person dies, a family cries. Yeah? Yes or no? For a family, perhaps 10, 20 people, they cry. Within a second, 2 families, which means 40 people. Another second, another second, another second. Within a minute, 60 people die in this world. It happens. That means you can see that most of them are suffering. Most of them are crying. Out of their cry, or underneath their cry, they try to smile. People try to smile, ladies and gentlemen. That's why you need a stand-up comedian to make your life happy. You need to live with a joker. Then you will be happy. At least you can see you smile. You want to watch comedy movies. You love them because you want to laugh. Why? Why do you want to laugh? Why do you spend money to laugh, ladies and gentlemen? Ask this question from your well-educated ego. Ask these questions. Why do you spend money to laugh? Because laughter can't be created in the ego. Real laughter, I'm telling you. That means happiness. Happiness is not in the ego. You have to create, you have to invent. That's why the society has invented it. That's why we have stand-up comedians. I'm not insulting them, but they have their own job. Actually, they do a pretty good job. They try to make other people laugh. And they laugh for an hour or hour and a half. After that, they go home with their own problems and they try to solve their problems and they fight each other and come to the same life. Back to the same life. And again, after a few months, another popular stand-up comedian or whoever comes to the town, then again, you go and laugh. When I see these things, I feel so sorry for these people. That's why we do these sermons, because we found the truth and we practice it. Therefore, we know that it's for sure. This is the truth. And we put that into our life. And we can experience these things. We can experience this and this. Therefore, we know this is the problem. Not only the Buddha's words before, which means at the beginning, it was the Buddha's words. We had to believe that. We had to believe and we had to practice. When we practiced that, we saw that this is the problem and we saw this is the life. Therefore, finally, we have been practicing and we can experience this. Therefore, we know this for sure. That's why we always want you to practice the path. First of all, find the path and practice the path. Finally, then you will find your life, which means the life, the heaven, which means the kingdom of heaven. You will achieve the kingdom of heaven. You will see God. You will see the kingdom of heaven when you are alive. When you are alive, ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to die. When you die, we never know what will happen to you. But When you are still alive, you can see God. You can meet God. You can see the kingdom of heaven. You can enter the kingdom of heaven. This is how you can enter the kingdom of heaven. This is the kingdom of heaven. Why don't you achieve this then? If this is the kingdom of heaven, why don't you achieve this? I know that everybody wants to go to heaven at least, because the earth is not enough for them. Because they believe, everybody, if you talk to anyone in any religion, Buddhists, Hindus, Christians, Muslims, whoever, if you ask them, then they will definitely say that I want to go to heaven. That's their final destination. That's what they want. Because they all think that the earth is the problem. This is the problem. Earth is the problem. The planet Earth, that is the problem. Is that a problem, ladies and gentlemen? Why? Because this is a sphere? Why? What's wrong with the earth? The problem is within you. Wherever you are, if the ego is there, you will suffer. When you go to heaven, let's assume that you go to heaven, the world heaven. Then when you go to heaven, but now you become a god or an angel, let's assume that. At least an angel. You become an angel. Right. Now you become an angel, but ego is there. Then again, you have wantings, you have vexations, you have ignorance, you have attachment. You had to deal with all these things, and you had to make money. Or you had to make power to produce things. Because when you have wantings, then you had to fulfill them. Whether you are God or a human. It doesn't matter who you are. If you live with the ego, you have wantings. You have fear. You have everything. Therefore, no point in being someone else, ladies and gentlemen. Be yourself. That's totally fine, because be yourself. If you can be yourself, wherever you are, you will be the happiest person in the world. Otherwise, according to the Buddha, there are 31 realms. There are 31 realms. Wherever you live, you have to live with the ego. That means you have to live with fear, you have to live with jealousy, you have to live with resentment, you have to live with regret, you have to live with everything. And looking for happiness. Not experiencing happiness. You can't do that, because ego can't experience happiness. Ego can chase happiness. Therefore, I want you to, I means we want you to make your heaven in the earth while you are a human being. You are a human being. The Buddha was a human being, ladies and gentlemen. The human mind can achieve a lot. You don't have to become an angel, or you don't have to become a god to achieve this. You just need to purify your mind, which means you need to eradicate the process, cease the process. That's the only thing you need to do. But when I say that's the only thing you need to do, it's easier said than done. It takes some time, because great things takes time, ladies and gentlemen. You have to give time. You have to take time. You have to take time and practice. If you can understand about the ego, then if you can see what it has done to your life, and if you know that your life was ruined by this, And you are moving here and there. You have been moving here and there, and you want to travel, you want to enjoy. But actually, you always want to enjoy. That's how you tell. I want to enjoy. I want to enjoy a meal. When you want to eat something, you always say, I want to enjoy the meal. I want to enjoy the movie. I want to enjoy my journey. I want to enjoy my friendship. Whatever it is. I want to enjoy. I want to enjoy. I want to enjoy. Why, ladies and gentlemen? If you want to enjoy, why do you have to do something? If you want to enjoy, why do you have to do something? Just think about that. Why don't you free yourself? With that, I let you make the decision. Think about that. You have a week. Next time, before you come to the monastery, you have a week. During that week, I want you to reflect your life with the Dhamma. You will try. You will do that. And you will see that finally. The ego. You will see the ego. If you will be able to see the ego, you will come as a new person. Then I don't have to encourage you to do anything. You will be encouraged by seeing this. The Buddha said, Grahakaraka dittosi. The carpenter who has been making the house. The houses. Graha means house. Gruha. House is seen. The carpenter is seen. This is the house. This is the carpenter. Attachment. Attachment always creates the ego. Then if you can see the ego, you will see the attachment, the carpenter. And if you can destroy the carpenter, he never ever build houses again for you. Therefore, now you can see the problem and you can see the problem creator. This is the creator. Now we need to deal with this. Therefore, in this week, during this week, if you can reflect your life, if you can see the ego, it will be great. Try to do that, because listening is not enough. You can come every day and you can listen. You can gather knowledge and you can be superior to others. Again, you serve the ego. This ego is very dangerous, because while you are listening, ego is making decisions. You know that. Therefore, the ego wants to remember all the facts I talked about. All the things, all the good things, all the good arguments. The ego wants to remember them, because then you can go to society, you can talk to others, you can tell others, do you know that? This is not the life, this is the life. You can talk to them, you can preach to them. By preaching, you can be superior to others. Don't be deceived. You had to be vigilant, because this always uses that. Therefore, what you have to do is, whatever happens to you during this week, I want you to differentiate between these two, the life and the ego. And when you are vexed, just think about that. When you are vexed, and that means you have a wanting. When you have a wanting, just think about that. Why the consciousness needs something, or why the consciousness wants something. The consciousness doesn't need anything or want anything. That means if you want something, now you can identify that, oh, this is the ego. Then to achieve, anyway, you have to achieve that. Because when you have a wanting, you can't stop that. You have to achieve that. When you achieve, you have to work hard. When you work hard, at least try to understand that due to the ego, I have to work hard. Due to the ego, I had to waste my time. That means I had to waste my life. Due to the ego. Therefore, you can point your finger at the ego all the time, not your next door neighbor, not your spouse, not your ex-husband, ex-wife. Otherwise, you always finger at them and you never find the real enemy. Then you live with the enemy and you always point your finger at someone. That means you are barking up the wrong tree. Always. You have been doing that. When I understood this, my enemies, friends, family, everything disappeared. Now, everyone is in my family. I love everyone equally. I want everyone to attain Nibbana. I want everyone, every being, every sentient being, if they can, but animals can't, ghosts can't. I don't have any special family. I don't have any special people. You will realize that when you understand this. But if you live with this will create special people and you will love them. One day, you will hate them. That's why you have enemies and beloved one. You have beloved people as well as enemies. One day, he was one of your beloved ones, and the other day, he became the enemy. Now you hate him. You hate her. That's how it happened. Therefore, if you create, or if the ego creates special people, then you will have special people. Then you have, or you will experience many things. But if you can eradicate the ego, at least suppress it, then you will experience this. When you experience this, you will see that everything is neutral in this world. Everything is neutral. Nothing is special. Everything is neutral. This is neutral and this is also neutral. Therefore, you don't have to love this and you don't have to hate this, because everything is neutral. But if this is special, you will love this. And one day you will hate this, because this became the special one. Therefore, find the enemy. This is the enemy. This is the enemy. That's why I told you, when I realized this, all the enemies, enemies means I had some people I didn't like, because they don't have good attributes. They are bad. I had that in my mind. They are bad. And some of them are good. Therefore, I loved them. I loved them and I hate them. That's the problem. And actually, problem was with me. The problem was with me, ladies and gentlemen. When I realized that, then I don't have any enemies now. If I don't have any enemies, why should I be angry? Why should I try to destroy someone? Then when we want to destroy someone, our mind is enraged. And starts to burn. You can't burn someone without burning yourself. Therefore, you always burn yourself when you're angry. You don't have to do that. Just eradicate this. This is the enemy. Enemy means this is the problem, this is the issue. Therefore, first of all, or at the beginning, before I start the sermon, I ask you to find the solutions for your own issues or your problems. Now, you may have 1,000 issues, 1,000 problems, but actually you have only one issue. This is the issue. And you have only one answer. This is the answer. If you can eradicate this, and this will be eradicated, after that, you won't have any problems anymore. Therefore, now you can see this. You can see the path according to the Buddha's doctrine. I explained to you, but I use words. Words are not for the salvation, ladies and gentlemen. We can't use words to achieve our salvation because words are the greatest barrier between us. Therefore, we will listen to more sermons and you will practice. You will put this into practice. I want you to put this into practice. You will put this into practice and one day you will realize this. I don't want you to tell these in words. I want you to practice and I want you to realize this, the truth. You will realize the truth one day when you practice. Practice means you need to listen to sermons. Perhaps you need to discuss or you can preach one day when you understand this properly. Otherwise, this will make a disaster. Therefore, you can preach. There are 5 ways the Buddha asks us to practice, which is called Pancha Vimuktayatane. There are 5 ways. We can practice, we can chant the Dhamma. We can meditate, which means contemplate. We can discuss. We can preach. We can listen. Now you listen and I preach. At the same time I listen. And I contemplate. I do 3 things at the same time. You do 2 things. You listen and contemplate. But if you don't contemplate, you only listen. But when you go home, you don't have the teacher. Therefore, preaching is not there. But you can listen to recordings. It is in YouTube. You can listen to them. Then, the other thing is, you can contemplate. That's the main thing. If you can contemplate, if you can put this into your life, then you will realize this. One day, you will come here with a smile, ladies and gentlemen, but without a joker, without a stand-up comedian. You will come with a smile, with a laughter. That laughter will stay in your face forever. Therefore, I invite you to the kingdom of heaven. We will see you next week. May the blessings of the Noble Triple Gem be with you all. Thank you. And I'm really sorry if I hurt you.